What is going on? Welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. This is episode 86 of the podcast. I am your host, Johnny Stope, and of course, alongside me, as always, from flamesnation.ca, it's the one, the only, Robert Munich. How are we doing, Robert?
Doing good, man. It's been a fun last week and a bit here between the Nemec trade and the draft. Like it's been really, really enjoyable to be a hockey fan, and we're still not done. Still got a little bit more to go here in the offseason before we take a little break here. But yeah, it's been good.
And it's been reflective in the numbers of the podcast. Our last 5 episodes are now 5 of our top 6 ever listened to podcasts. So we're enjoying it as a Flames group together here, talking about Flames, talking about the draft, the excitement around the draft. It's coming, it's gone, Robert. The Flames end up making some nice picks, some interesting picks, some reaches. But the main thing is they got their guy at Carel's at number 6. Would you make of the draft overall here, Robert, before we dive into the particulars?
As a whole, I think you walk away, pretty happy for the most part. I mean, I think the Carel's pick is a grand slam home run. I'm super excited about that one. And then quite honestly, I mean, picks 30 through, the 7th round, they're essentially all lottery tickets to a certain extent. So we truly don't know how any of these players are going to pan out. Like, yes, there are comparables and there's draft reports on them and all that kind of stuff that we can read and digest and kind of try to kind of figure out what these players are going to be at the next level. But in reality, we truly don't know. So it's going to be really interesting to see how a lot of these players develop and what they end up looking like in 5 or 6 years. But I think this draft was critical for the future of the Flames. And if they can walk away here with 3 legitimate NHL players and Carl's as a top pairing defenseman, I think you'd be pretty happy for the most part. So yeah, overall, I wish they would have kind of swung for skill a little bit more than they did. But I mean, overall, it feels like a pretty decent draft class. And a lot of draft experts are saying that Calgary did really well. So, what more could you ask for, I guess?
The number 1 pick, Gavin McKenna.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah,
it's never going to hapen.
My favorite part of this draft is we were talking about before the draft and coming into the draft how the Flames have 11 picks, and I went as far as saying if you use all 11 picks, it's a failure. The Flames used 9 of the 11 picks, got aggressive with their goaltender that they really, really wanted. They got aggressive with the trade before the draft to bring in Simon Nemec or Simo Nemec, however you want to say it. And then they went out and they were able to target their guys. And I thought for sure they would trade up again in round 1 to get their guy. It turns out the board fell almost perfectly for Calgary when they were able to get their guy in Jack Hextall. Made me quite happy. You and I had some texts about that, and I boasted on Twitter about my selection of Jack Hextall. And for the rest of these draft picks, exactly what you just said, Robert. These are lottery picks. And so it's going to be fun to talk about these players and to watch the development of these players and what they actually become. And for me, this draft kind of filled some holes. Like we have a ton of prospects coming in the Flames organization, and they added a little bit of truculence to that group with Chase Harrington, in my opinion. They got the goaltender that they wanted. Sigalette was on the Fan 960, and it was his guy from the start of the draft that he wanted, so he was able to get his goaltender. And then they took some shots in the dark in rounds 3, 4, and 5, and we'll see how those players turn out, Robert. So, but let's chat about the guy at the top of the list, the one everyone's talking about, the farm boy, the guy who got picked on the farm with his family around him as they were trying to do some cabin and some other stuff on the farm there. Carel's defenseman, left shot. Mr. Do-It-All, as I kind of call him. What'd you make of this pick, and how big of a fit do you think it is for the Flames? Because I think this is an absolute home run for Calgary and their pick at number 6.
Yeah, I think it's a home run too. And like you said, this is a guy who does everything, whether it's physicality. Like I posted a video to Flames Nation. Dave Hall, who's our prospects writer at Canucks Army, put together a compilation of Carel's hits, and he destroys people. Like the physicality is phenomenal, which is really exciting because I do think when you have Parekh and Nemec and Brustevich, even Kuznetsov's not the most physical guy. To have someone that can go out there and punish forwards, I think is awesome. But then there's also the offensive side to him, and there's the skating, and he's pretty good size, about 6'2", 200 pounds. I mean, what more could you ask for in a Calgary Flame defenseman? I mean, I kind of get like a little bit of Dion Phaneuf vibes from him in the sense of the physicality, the shot, the skating, just like a dynamic player that can bring so much to your team. And, those players, they don't grow on trees. Like those guys are very rare to find. So the fact that the Flames got him at 6 overall, I think is awesome. I think he could be a great partner for a Zane Parekh or Simon Nemec in the future. And yeah, I don't think you could have asked for a better player at number 6 if you're the Flames. And now all of a sudden, between the goaltending and the decor, the Flames are stacked in the roster. Like it's ridiculous how good they are there. And I think that's really exciting. And now it's just time to find some forwards. But yeah, overall, I love the Carson Carles pick. I'm really, really happy about it. And I think he's going to turn into, I think he's going to be a top pairing defenseman, but even if he doesn't turn into that, he still feels like a guy who'll be like a number 3 or number 4, which is still super valuable. Like I don't think there's any like boom or bust potential here. Like I think he's a surefire NHLer and most likely a top pairing defenseman.
Yeah, and he earned a high praise from Craig Conroy, who called this guy a captain caliber NHL prospect. That's pretty high praise you could give to a prospect and bring him into your organization. There's high hopes for him here. He does everything for you, and I think, like you mentioned it there, Robert, I think he's going to be a perfect top pair defenseman for one of these young offensive studs that the Flames have built here. I love the conversation on social media around Carel's and about why do the Flames pick another defenseman? Why do we have another defenseman? Robert, have you ever heard an executive in the NHL or a GM or even an NHL coach complain about having too many good defensemen?
No, I don't think I have.
I don't think I've ever heard that. So I think the way the Flames are building here, and they absolutely do have a lack of center depth and scoring depth, and that's absolutely something they need to look into. But the way they've built this roster here, you're going to have a tough time scoring against this team. You're going to have a tough time in the Flames zone because you're going to have guys that can move the puck, like Parekh and Nemec can move the puck out of the zone very well. Carel's can move that puck very well. You have guys that are going to be hitting. Carel's can hit you very, and make you pay for it. Kuznetsov has a good reach. Kevin Ball's a huge human. You're not going to make it easy on your opponents in your own end, and I think that's a very smart way to build. People complain about the goaltender. We'll get to him in a minute as well. But it's like at the same time, it's like you have strong goaltending down the middle. So now the Flames need to worry about, hey, how do we develop our forward group to match this juggernaut of the defense that we have going on here? And they started that little bit of a march towards that by taking the guy that I truly, truly think will be a difference maker at the NHL level. A nice 2 or 3 C for the Flames down the road. I think Jack Hextall has a bright future ahead of him. This guy does a lot of good things quite well. He reminds me a little bit about Sean Couturier style of player. Doesn't score quite like Sean did when he was younger, but those are things that you can learn as you're going through your college career here. I think Jack Hextall does a lot of nice things, and I think he fits in perfectly to what the Flames are trying to do up front. What'd you make of Jack Hextall at that pick? I saw on Twitter that a lot of people either loved or hated this pick, and I fall on the like side of this. Where do you fall with Jack Hextall?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't love it. I understand what they're trying to do here. This Jack Hextall feels like the kind of player who, he's got a pretty high floor, in the sense of he's probably going to be able to play in the NHL as a third line kind of shutdown center or a fourth line kind of shutdown center. And, when you have Cole Reshny as your 2C, and then next year, I can guarantee the Flames are going to have another top 5 pick. There's 4 or 5 excellent centers available in next year's draft. Mm-hmm. So if you could take your number 1 center at next year's draft, have Reshny as your potential 2, and then Hextall as a 3, I see where they're coming from there. So from that perspective, I think it makes sense. But, just my overall theory on the draft is that I think you should swing for the fences every pick and take the most skilled player available, the guy with the highest ceiling, and swing like that as many times as you possibly can. And this one felt like a safe pick to me for Jack Hextall. But hey man, I hope you're right. I hope he turns into almost like a Michael Backlund type of player. Maybe he won't be quite as good as Backlund, but kind of that third line center shutdown guy. Maybe put up 35-ish points and win faceoffs and be responsible on the defensive side. I think that would be great for this Calgary Flames organization moving forward. So yeah, I hope it works out, but just I was kind of hoping they'd take a bit of a swing on someone with a little bit more skill and a little bit more offensive upside, because I think that's what this organization desperately needs right now.
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely fair opinion there, and it's a well put by you. I think you hit it there on the head, though. I think this guy feels like the next Michael Backlund style of player, and if he can round out his game and really work on the things that he needs to work on, I think he's going to be really good. One thing about this guy's game that I really like is how good he is in the face-off dot, and how he was in the USHL and how he's dominating that. If you look at his stats, so good pick. It should be an interesting pick. Interesting development. He's going to the University of Michigan, the state of Michigan State, I think. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, Michigan State.
Michigan State. I got my schools mixed up there for a second. He's going to be a Spartan next year, and I think he has a good opportunity to force his way into that top 6 and play some important minutes for that team. So it'll be interesting to watch his development there. Overall, in round 1, I think you could be pretty pleased with what they did in round 1. Round 2 was a bit weird as they moved around a little bit. They had a couple of picks here. They went after Chase Harrington with pick 36. For me, this one was a bit of a surprise that he went so high in round 2. I thought he'd be something that they'd pick around 55-ish, 60, somewhere in there. If you're a Western Hockey League watcher, you've seen this guy play. And for me, when I watch him play, one thing comes to my mind. It's straight lines, and he will run over you if you're in that straight line. He's not the sexiest pick. It was not the sexiest pick on the board. There's a lot of skill on the board there. What'd you make of Chase Harrington? I think this definitely falls into that, hey, this is a safe pick for the Flames. What'd you make of this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I see it is, if you look at the Flames prospect pool, especially up front, it's a lot of smaller players. It's a lot of guys who are pretty skilled, good skaters. Really, I mean, the only guy that I can think of, this is just off the top of my head, who has size and can play physical and all that kind of stuff, is Sam Honzek right now. And I think the Flames were looking at their prospect pool and saying, we got to add some toughness, we got to add some size, and Chase Harrington brings both of those things, and as well as some skill on top of that. I guess he's got a really good shot. Was just shy of a point per game in the WHL last year, but he even said himself, he's like, I'm a bit of a rat, and I like to get under my opponent's skin. I like to hit. I like to fight, and he can score a little bit. It's kind of sounds like the ultimate hockey player. So it does feel like a little bit of a reach, but at the same time, it's something that the Flames don't have really anything of in their prospect system as of right now. So if he could turn into, say, a 30 to 35 point, physical, I'm going to beat the shit out of you kind of guy and get under opponent's skin, I think that would be an awesome result for this player. And if he's anything more than that, then it's a home run. So yeah, I don't mind the profile there. Once again, I wish they would have swung for the fences on skill, but in terms of fit in the organization, it feels like Harrington's going to be a pretty good fit, and we'll see if it ends up working out or not.
There seems to be a theme in this draft, Robert. The Flames looking at their prospect pool and be like, we need to fill this hole. Because that's what Chase Harrington feels like to me. This is what a couple other of these prospects further down the list feel like. They picked a couple of big bodies in the later rounds in this draft. Just, hey, we need to fill some needs here. And so I think that's where Chase Harrington fits here. The Flames then make a move up from 51 to 42. They take the first goaltender off the board. Jordan Sigalet raved about how good this kid is. You watch his game. I don't know how much you watched this guy. Clips you watch of him, he seems like he's a nice, calm goaltender in the net. But like every goaltender, it's voodoo. You never know what's going to happen. What'd you make of the Tobias Trable pick there at 42 and the Flames goaltending pipeline? Now it's another body.
Yeah, I mean, this one feels like one of those swings where it's like we're trying to get the best player available, and if Trey is the best goalie out there, then you're just adding another really good asset to your organization. I mean, that's one way to look at it. The other way to kind of look at it for me was, is it really necessary to take a goalie this high as of right now? I mean, you take a look at the Flames goaltending depth chart. It's Dustin Wolf, who's about to enter year 1 of a 7-year contract. You have Carel Zarubin, you have Yegor Yegorov, you have Arseny Sergeyev. You have a ton of really good young goalies already in your system. And just the idea that they traded a pick, I guess they traded 2 picks to move up to take Trable. was that the best use of your assets? Was that the best use of you trying to move up and take somebody? Because like, what if Trable turns into like a really good goaltender, and you have to choose between him and Dustin Wolf? Like, to me, it's just like Wolf is your guy. You have 3 other young guys in the system already. Was this necessary? Like, this high in the draft at pick 42. Once again, I would have rather seen them, take a home run swing on a guy like Mathis Preston or somebody like that. But Jordan Siglet's been remarkable. The whole goaltending department has been remarkable when it comes to scouting and goalie development. So I'm not going to question them in terms of if Trable's the guy or not, because I'm sure he is, because this goaltending department doesn't miss. But I'm just wondering, organizationally, did you really need to take a goalie this high? That's kind of my only question here.
Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. I don't mind it for the fact of it's another goaltender in the stable, and I go back to that you can never have too many goalies here. If he turns out to be this starter that Jordan Siglet thinks he is, you trade someone, I guess, something else. But at the same time, then why are you drafting a goaltender just to develop and trade? You should just swing for the fences, like you've mentioned a couple times here, Robert. So interesting pick at 42. I don't mind it. I like having a nice strong pipeline of goaltenders. But interesting now to see who of these goaltenders can emerge to be a backup here, because Cooley's not going to be around forever, and you need a reliable backup behind Dustin Wolf here. So maybe it is Trable, maybe it isn't. We will know in a few years down the road. We're probably like 6-7 years away from him being anything anyways.
Yeah.
Pick 55, they took Allen. I don't think Allen has a last name. This has to be a fake last name. You can go ahead and try it if you want to. But Allen out of Russia, I will flat out admit, Robert, I've never heard of this guy before this draft, and I know very little about him after the draft other than what I've read from draft experts who say that he has a nice offensive skill set, uses his ice wisely, and plays a typical Russian winger game. It's all I've heard of this guy. What'd you make of this pick? But he seems to be one of those betting on Russian skill type picks.
I've never wanted a prospect not to make the NHL before, but this might be the first time, because I don't want to take this guy's name out. He is going to be Allen from now. Allen S. from Russia.
Yeah.
Was it Shaksulamov? Like, oh my God.
Yeah, good luck.
That's a mouthful, but yeah, I mean, kind of an obscure pick. This kind of the Flames, they do have a Russian scout, like boots on the ground, which is I don't know if every NHL team has that right now. And Denis Greshkabov, former Oilers defenseman. So yeah, he's there in Russia, and he's like at these rinks, he's watching these kids, and a lot of the public scouting models, like they don't have Russian scouts. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of NHL teams that don't have a Russian scout. So this might be a diamond in the rough pick, where it's just like the Flames had boots on the ground and they had their eyes on them, and nobody else really saw the same sort of potential that the Flames do. But this is the type of pick where it feels like there's a lot of talent there. And my understanding is that he was 2 days away from being eligible for next year's draft. So he's literally one of the youngest players in this draft.
It's crazy.
Which is interesting. So yeah, I mean, I got no problem with this pick. I know a lot of public scouting services didn't even have him ranked, but I know, like, I've seen like a lot of scouting models show that this has the potential to be a really good player. So yeah, I mean, seems like he's super talented, and it might just be one of those diamonds in the rough. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one.
It's kind of the area. It's kind of the area of the draft where you kind of take a swing, right? When you have 3 first, second rounders, this is kind of like one of them must take a swing with something. And yes, just like you mentioned, this is now where it gets interesting. I cannot wait for your takes on this one. They definitely reached here. It feels like a nostalgia. They went here to start round 3. It definitely feels like, hey, we can't let this kid go away. And I'm going to take his name out of it. If you're reaching for a player that's projected later in the 4th, even 5th round, maybe 6th on some models, you have to have absolute faith that you see something that somebody else is missing. You have to see something in a player to draft them this much out of order. The Flames go with the family name. They take Joe Aginla at 65. Like I said, kind of feels like a nostalgia pick, your reach of a pick. What'd you make of drafting Joe Aginla to start round 3 at pick 65 that the Flames here did?
You know what? Like, you see online, the differences in opinion are wild. There's some people that are like, I love this pick. Like, welcome back and Iginla to the organization. There's other people that are like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I think there's, a bunch of statements can be true about this draft pick. Like, number one, it is a great story. Like, this is a super cool story. It's cool to have an Iginla back in the organization. Joe seems like a great kid, obviously comes from great bloodlines. Like, that's all great, and Flames fans can celebrate that and have some fun with that. I think the story's awesome. And, there is a chance that he can turn into an NHL player one day. Like, you just never know with these guys, right? And Conroy was saying that Iginla, he had the trade from Edmonton to Vancouver, and then I guess he had some rib issues that really hurt his game this year. And he's a smaller guy, and they think between Jerome and Tej, they think that there's still a lot of room left for Joe to grow and get bigger and stronger and work on his game. So, that's great too. But at the same time, it absolutely was a reach. There is no doubt about that. Zero doubt. Central Scouting had him ranked 200th among North American skaters, not in like the entire list, among North American skaters. Basically, every single scouting service did not have Joe Iginla ranked, and a lot of these services go 150, 200 players deep, and Joe was not even ranked. So clearly, the Flames, to take him at pick 65 does not make sense whatsoever, especially when you have picks in the 5th and 6th round here. And then, in my opinion, like, should the Flames put their emotion aside and put the last name aside and make the best pick they possibly think they can? I think they should. I think that's the way they should go about their drafting, but clearly that wasn't the case with this pick. It's just, yes, it's a good story. Yes, it's a reach. But in my opinion, like, they probably should have been a little bit smarter and maybe take, Joe, and we'll call it the 6th round. I'd like pick 164. I think that would have been a little bit smarter, but they know this. They know the family. Obviously, I think Craig and Todd have watched Joe, play a million times. So maybe they see that there's something there, and they took a swing. So I like the story. I don't necessarily like where they picked him, but the difference between you getting out of your rebuild successfully or not is not going to be because you took Joe Iginla at pick 65. So we gotta add some context to this thing. But yeah, overall, not the smartest move for them. Definitely an emotional pick. They picked with their heart, not their head. But we just never know. It might work out.
I'll go to bat a little bit for the Flames and see if I can justify the pick, just for the sake of having the other side of the conversation. If you're taking a player that's not ranked or very low ranked on a lot of other models and most models, you have to think there's something there. You have to see something that you think you can cultivate out of this player. And it might just be the familiarity factor that Conroy's seen him 1,000 times, and of course Iginla's seen him 1,000 times. It just must be one of those things where they see something with this player. I watched Joe in the Western Hockey League, and he doesn't pop off the page at you. You don't have a highlight reel of Joe Iginla that's very long. He has a decent shot. He doesn't know how to use that shot. He's got some okay skating ability, but it's nothing like his dad or his brother. So there's got to be something the Flames see here to pick him so high. I'm with you, Robert. I'm with a lot of Flame fans. This felt like a pick they could have done in the 5th round. They could have used him at 132 or the 164 pick. They could have traded back into the early round 7 and drafted this player to get him. So take his name out of it. It's kind of an interesting pick at 65 to make. You put the name back in it, and it probably makes a little bit more sense. Definitely does have that nostalgia. Hey, it's an Iginla back to the Flames organization feel to this pick.
Yeah, if his name was Joe Smith, he's not getting picked there.
No,
straight up.
No, straight up. Absolutely. It's also interesting if you go back to the round 3 and depending how deep you are in your draft knowledge and drafting, a lot of people online were thinking, why did we take this guy? Or why wasn't this guy taken? Hey, we left this skill on the board. And so you have to believe who you ever believe here, but you have draft experts that do this for a living saying, man, they left these 3 or 4 guys on the board I would have taken swings at. So interesting pick by the Flames at 65. These next 3, the last 3 picks the Flames made here, Robert, I don't know a ton about these players. They're all definitely lottery tickets, hoping that they turn into something. Did any of Yegor Barabanov, Simon Katolicki, or Bode Leyland do anything for you? What do you think of these picks? Everything after pick 100 for me kind of goes in one ear and out the other. But what do you make of the end of the draft here for the Flames?
Yeah, I don't have much to say about it because I've literally never watched any of these guys play. I've never even heard of them up until the draft. So yeah, I'm not gonna go out of my way to give a strong opinion on them. The only one I'll talk about a little bit is Igor Barabanov. I mean, this is his third time in the NHL draft, and he's 20 years old, and he was playing in the OHL as an overager. I mean, you go and look at his stats. Like I think he put up 91 points last year in Saginaw, but you have to keep in mind that he's doing that in the OHL, a league that lost a lot of its best 18 and 19 and 20-year-old players to the NCAA. And he played on a line with Nikita Klepov, who led the league in scoring. So, there's some skill there, but at the same time, as an overager, drafting a 20-year-old in the fourth round, like I don't know if those ever truly do pan out, but he does have quite a bit of skill. So I respect the pick in that sense, but at the same time, just I don't know, taking a 20-year-old with the fourth round pick, between Joe going at 65 and Barabanov going at 100, I mean those are two pretty high picks, relatively speaking, and to take swings on those guys that don't have like a ton of upside, I don't know if that made a ton of sense to me, but we'll see how it works. But it is a Barabanov, you're adding another skilled center to the mix, and that's what your organization needs. And who knows? Maybe he'll pop off in the next few years here. We just don't really know. But yeah, the 6th and 5th round picks, yeah, I literally have nothing to say about that.
I have no disrespect to these players, but I hope these three players do what Dustin Wolf did. Show why you should have been a higher pick in your draft and come in here and show something and be something at the National Hockey League level. They want to go ahead and be that diamond in the rough, the Nikita Kucherov or the Zetterberg of the 7th round type of pick. Go ahead and be one of those type of guys. I'm all for it, but I got nothing really to add for this draft class. So that is all in all 9 picks the Flames have made. If you were to letter grade this draft, Robert, you have a grade off the top of your head. I'm going with a B plus type of grade. I like what they did at the top end of the draft, and then the middle part of the draft was a bit weird, and you can't really grade these end picks. But if you were to letter grade this draft, you got one off the top of your head there?
I mean, the Carl's pick is an A+ for me. Like I think that's an awesome pick. The rest of the draft, I would probably have around a B or like a B-. So I mean, when you kind of combine those two things, yeah, I'll say it's about a B or a B+. Overall, I think Carl's is a stud, and then you're hoping one or two of the remaining 8 players that were picked can turn into regular NHL players. And like we said, whether it's Hextall as a third line center, Harrington as a middle 6 sort of physical forward, Treyball as a potential 1A, 1B goalie, like, there's some potential there for some NHLers. But once again, I feel like they didn't, like, especially compared to the last 2 draft classes, I feel like they really took a lot of swings on skill and speed and hockey sense in those drafts. And this one, and it didn't really feel like they had that same approach. So yeah, I'll say overall it's a B for me. I think it's good, but I feel like it could have been more.
Yeah, we're definitely happy with the draft. I think I'm happy with the draft class. I'm not as happy as I was in the 25 or the 24 draft, where you saw Conroy kind of bet on skill a lot. He went after a lot of skill players, and he didn't really care about position there, which was nice. And you kind of had him pick the players that he thought were going to develop. And then he comes to this draft to kind of plug some holes. But I think overall I'm happy with the draft, just not as happy as I was in the past couple of drafts. If that makes any sense there. The weekend was full of rumors. The week was full of weirdness and trades, and a whole bunch of things went around the league there, Robert. You heard a lot around the Flames about how they possibly could move up in round 1, or they have all this draft capital to use. Did you want to see, though, the Flames make a bit more of a splash? They made that splash with the Nemec trade. They moved up in round 2 to get the goaltender they really wanted, but they really didn't do much else outside of that. Did you want them to make a bigger splash draft weekend there? Because there was a lot of rumors on the table. We didn't really see a ton for Calgary.
I mean, the Nemec trade itself is a pretty big splash. So, when you take that into consideration, I think they did pretty well acquiring a 22-year-old defenseman who has the potential to be, play in your top 4 for the next, call it 10 years. That's pretty exciting. In terms of like the draft itself, I personally would have loved to have seen them go after like Winnipeg's 8th overall pick or Seattle's pick, or try to somehow find another pick, particularly we'll call it the top 11, because I really felt like there were 10 or 11 really good prospects there, and then it kind of fell off a bit. So I would have loved to have seen them throw in a bunch of roster players and draft picks and do everything they can to move up, but ultimately that didn't end up happening. So like I kind of wish something like that happened. Then the other thing too is I do wish that they were able to somehow move off a couple bodies off the NHL roster. I mean, like I got an article coming out at Flames Nation on Tuesday, kind of diving into what the depth chart looks like right now, and there are about 20 forwards who are either NHL players or knocking on the door to be NHL players up front. There's only 12 spots, so you got 20 guys right now. You got 10 defensemen. Like there's a lot of bodies on that roster, and it would have been nice to see Conroy kind of realize that and try his best to move off a couple of them at least, and then try to move off a couple more between now and training camp. But I mean, overall, the Nemec trade is a huge splash. They get Carson Carles at 6. I mean, that you basically solidified your blue line for the next 10 to 12 years, which is really, really exciting. So I guess overall, I would say no. I think they did enough in terms of like an overall splash, but at the same time, there are some areas of need in terms of moving out players, and they didn't do that. So I'm kind of mixed a little bit. How about you?
Yeah, I'm right there too. The one thing that I really wish we saw was that, just exactly that, moving off a guy or two. You really saw what the Vegas Golden Knights did with Dorofeev, shipping him off to the Rangers for a couple of picks, kind of quiet at the draft league, just kind of slid him over there and have kind of wish that kind of happened, whether it was somebody actually ponies up for a Connor Zary or they were able to find a home for a Blake Coleman at the draft. That style of move, just a player or two off the roster, would have been nice to see. I know it's easier said than done, and the draft has a lot of moving parts, and it now turns to, can they do something after people fail in free agency? Can they circle back to the Flames here? But just kind of wish we saw one or two of those style of trades where it was nothing big, nothing splashy, nothing, didn't have to be blockbustery type thing. But if you saw, say, Connor Zary to Columbus for a 3rd round pick type of trade, would have been fine to see. I think he did, like you mentioned there, a big splash before the draft. The bringing in Nemec is awesome to see, and then being able to draft Carson Carel is a pretty big splash in my opinion too, getting what a lot of people were calling the best defenseman on the board in their models there. So it's pretty good to see. So I think overall though it was a pretty splashy week for Craig Conroy. And now we get up for the next step, Robert, and that would be free agency. How excited are you for July 1st and this awesome list of free agents?
Sense a little bit of sarcasm there.
Oh, but Adam Henrique's not tickling your fancy?
No. I don't really feel all that intrigued by where Sam Lafferty's going to end up, or Jake Bean. No.
Weird.
But
Weird.
I would say actually, you know what? Overall, this is the least excited I've ever been for July 1st. And normally I am jacked up for free agency day. I just think it's so much fun. Just like how many signings go down, like how many teams improve, who gets better, who gets worse. Like I love it. This year, I'm not very excited for it. And it's just basically for the reason that you just said. I mean, the free agent class is truly terrible. And at the same time, the Flames they're not going to be in the mix for any of these guys. Like I just said, like they already have way too many bodies on the NHL roster as it is. So it would literally make no sense whatsoever to go out and sign anybody unless it's to a two-way contract and you're trying to add some veteran presence for your AHL team coming up this year. So yeah, in terms of like a free agency preview for the Flames or anything like that, like I don't think one exists because they're just they're not in the market whatsoever to be signing anybody unless between now and July 1st, Conroy goes out and trades, 5 or 6 players, which is not going to happen, and they need to fill maybe one spot in the lineup or something, then sure. But yeah, like it's just there's nothing to talk about when it comes to the Calgary Flames in free agency this season.
My favorite part of free agency will be who gives Mason Marchman the 6x6 deal, or who decides they need to get themselves some Ian Cole at like 4x4, something stupid like that. We're gonna see those dumb moves. As far as the Flames considered, I would put my phone away if I was a Flames fan on July 1st. You're probably gonna see some Wranglers type signings. And that's probably about it, because there's not much out there that would help the Flames right now anyways. So if Craig Conroy, when he listens to this podcast, he'll know to put his phone away and not sign anybody. And it's more for me is working on the internal stuff that he needs to get done. The RFA market's been set as well. The Flames have done their qualifying offers. They've only issued qualifying offers to Simon Nemec, Brendan Othman, and William Stromgren. Everyone else on the list, Beechers, Siona Bell, King, Grechnikov, White, and Say, have not been qualified. So I think if you're Craig Conroy, it's more about focusing on the inside rather than the outside when it comes to free agency. Get your guys that have qualifying offers out there. Start getting those deals done. Work on getting the Wranglers roster filled up, and just kind of lose the NHL side of things for a while here, because you don't really have anything out there that's going to like jump off the page at you anyways. With those qualifying offers, Robert, were you surprised at anyone not getting a qualifying offer, or surprised by any of these guys that got a qualifying offer? Because for me, they all make sense to me, and nothing jumped off the page for me.
I'm right there with you. I think they all made sense. I don't think anyone got screwed over. I don't think there's a single player on that list of guys who did not receive a qualifying offer who are going to be long-term NHLers. Just watching the Calgary Wranglers over the last couple years, Lucas Siona is not going to be an NHL player. Parker Bell, struggled to make an impact at the AHL level, let alone the NHL level. Carter King, smart little centerman, but you got Castagna coming in, you got Gross coming in. I think both those guys have a higher ceiling than Carter King, so it makes sense that he's out. Grushnikov just did not work, at all for whatever reason. I'm not totally sure, but
that one's disappointing.
Gavin White. Yeah. Gavin White, he comes in for Jeremy Poirier, just a depth AHL player. And then Owen Say is the only one who actually might get a contract. Sigalet was on Steinberg's show today, and he had mentioned that they were just waiting for clearance from doctors to see if he's going to be fully healthy. And if that does end up happening, then it wouldn't surprise me if they bring Owen Say back. So, yeah, it's just, you feel bad for some of these guys. They've carved out, pretty decent little career for themselves in the AHL, but the Flames, they need to have a bunch of contract spots open up, because, potentially Carson Carels could get signed after this season. I think they should probably send him back to a second year in college, but Carels could sign, Potter could sign, Reshny could sign, Wittenbach can sign. There's 4 contracts right there, so you can't bring everybody back. So yeah, this all made sense. I forgot to mention Johnny Beecher, who I'm just not a fan of, as everybody knows.
I thought you did that on purpose.
He's not coming back. So yeah, all this makes complete sense. I think Craig Conroy did the right thing on all of these players here.
Yeah, he opens up 7 contract spots plus whatever else he trades throughout the season here. So that's probably some smart business by Conroy. The Wranglers needed a refresh as well. And with all of these prospects coming from these drafts we've had, you need some room for these players to play. Guys like Andrew Basha, and so on and so forth. They need a spot to play. Luke Misa, those type of players, somewhere for them to play, and maybe they can develop into a little bit more. I did want to ask you about one guy who got a qualifying offer, because he's interesting. We saw him get a couple NHL games this year. I wonder if he gets more NHL games and the usage of that player in the game. What do you make of William Stromgren as a Flames prospect? We saw the guy picked not long after him win a Stanley Cup in Logan Stankoven, and people love pointing that out. Where are we at here with William Stromgren? Because this kind of feels like, hey, this is it. Like, this is your kick at the can. What do you make of the big forward there?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think he's an NHL player. Just based on what I've seen with the Wranglers, and then his, I'm not even going to count his time in the NHL because he barely played. Yeah. And Ryan Huska gave him no role whatsoever. So it's almost unfair to judge him off that. But like, I've watched quite a bit of the Wranglers over the last couple of years, and Stromgren, he'll show a flash of brilliance, and then he just goes so quiet. And I just don't think the consistency's there. I don't know if he's, a good enough skater. I don't know if I see like the offensive upside at the NHL level for him. And if he's going to play in the NHL, it's going to be in the top 9. He's going to have to be a guy that produces a little bit of offense, and I just don't see that happening. And he's at an age now where it's do or die for him within the organization. So this is going to be a big season for him. And then, I mean, on top of that, where are you going to find room for him? Like there's so many guys, and I'll dive into that a little bit later here in the podcast. But like I just don't see a spot for him in the lineup either. So, I think he's in tough, but at the same time, if he ends up playing in the AHL next year and contributes to the Wranglers and helps turn that team around, that would be fantastic for the organization, because the Wranglers need to turn things around. I mean, like I went to a couple of games near the end of the season. Like it was sad being in the building. Like I'm talking less than 1,000 people, just no atmosphere whatsoever. Like it was rough. So the Wranglers need to turn things around this year, and Stroman could be a big part of that. I mean, he could be a 50-ish point player in the AHL, which would be great. So, but in terms of the NHL upside, I just don't see it, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah. Interesting. It's an interesting player, because when he was drafted, there was a lot of praise around that pick and around what he could have potentially become. It just hasn't happened. And if it hasn't happened by now, I'm not sure it's going to happen. And, it was interesting. He got qualifying offer. He's probably the most interesting of them all. But you're sitting here at the age of 23 now, going to be 24 next season. You're in the AHL as almost a career AHLer at the moment. What really are you? And I think we might have found what he maxed out as. So it'll be interesting to see how his season goes there. I know we make fun of the free agent list. We know we make fun of other teams and the qualifying offers, and we like to have a lot of fun like that. I was asked a question on Twitter today, and I wanted to bring that to the podcast here. And I'm sorry I didn't prep you for this one, but my day was a little chaotic. Someone asked me if there was a player that we saw out there that was not qualified by their NHL team that you would take a look at for the Flames. And I'll give you a minute to sit on that one, because I was thinking about it. I was like, if another team doesn't qualify a guy and you go and you sign this guy, does that really think that you're going to improve your NHL roster? You're going to play your roster? So my answer to this question is, if you're looking for AHL players, this is where you find different AHL players, guys not qualified by other teams. Is there anyone that you read today that jumps off the page as a player that you would target for the Flames? Because I couldn't think of anybody off the top of my head.
I didn't do a deep dive into that. Like I didn't really go around and look at the rest of the league, but based off of just the size of the Flames roster right now, I don't think any players would make sense. And like in years past, like I know like Chicago didn't qualify a guy like Dylan Strome, like those types of players I don't think are going to be available. I think teams are trying their best to keep as many good players as possible in their organization. And now that there's like an increased salary cap, like you can keep around a lot of those guys who may have been not qualified, say 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, I'd have to do a little bit of a deep dive to maybe find a name, but my initial reaction would be no. Like I just can't imagine there'd be a player out there that would make sense for the Flames. I mean, maybe for the Wranglers, for sure. There's probably a bunch of guys that make sense for the Wranglers, but for the NHL squad, I just don't think it makes sense right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Did you see any?
No. I didn't do a massive deep dive, but the ones I've saw, I really wouldn't spend a lot of energy on. It would be like, are you looking for another left winger for the Wranglers? Are you looking for a depth defenseman for the Wranglers? Those are the kind of players that you're finding out there. It's much like you're finding other teams, Bell, or other teams Sion on the market, or a failed guy like a Greshnikov somewhere else. Like you had those kind of guys and you moved on from them. I'm not sure that's where you want to do your shopping, much like the free agency UFA list. I'm not sure that's where you want to do your shopping at to try and improve your rosters. Draft's over. We got our RFA answers. We're probably not going to see a ton in the UFA market for the Flames. So the question then becomes, the offseason's pretty much underway here for the Flames. It has been for a while now. What's the priorities for Craig Conroy between now and training camp? I know he's got a lot on his plate to do contract-wise for some of these players here, but what do you make as the priority for Conroy between now and the start of training camp in September?
So I have an article coming out at Flames Nation on Tuesday, kind of diving into this, and like I went through like the whole organization, just areas of need, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, the only thing that I can think of that they really need to get accomplished this summer is moving out bodies. It's certainly not adding to this team. It's 100% subtracting. And like I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I came up with 20 forwards who like are either in the NHL, like legit NHLers, or are knocking on the door. And like I'm just gonna rip through the list here, but like it's kind of crazy. It's on the wings. It's Huberdeau, Coleman, Gridden, Farabee, Coronado, Zary, Honzig, Klapka, Sharangovich, Siplikov, Suniev, Cairns, Othman, Stromgren. And then down the middle, it's Morgan Frost, Michael Backlund, Ryan Strome, Marty Pospisil, Tyson Gross, Sam Morton. There's so many guys who are kind of just like bunched up there, who are going to want to get some NHL looks. And, like we all know Coleman's going to get traded between now and the deadline, but that's somebody that you think you'd want to try to move out this summer. Connor Zary, it's been reported that they're shopping him. It would be nice to get him out this summer because, I mean, you need to find a spot for Sharangovich. You want guys like Suniev, Karen, Stromgren, Morton, Othman, Gross. Like you want those types of players to get legitimate opportunities, which they did not get last year. Maybe outside of Gross playing those like 5 games to end last season. So yeah, I mean the guys that I'm looking at up front are Coleman, Zary, Siplikov, Sharangovich, and Pospisil as guys who maybe you're going to want to look to move out this year. And I think it's realistic to think you can move out at least 2 or 3 of them this summer, especially Coleman and Zary. And then, if they have a bunch of cap space and they need to fill out their forward group, would they be willing to take on a Sharangovich or a Siplikov, that type of player? So, up front, yeah, they absolutely need to move out some bodies. And then on the back end, like I have 10 defensemen who could play NHL games next year. And it's Kevin Ball, Yan Kuznetsov, Oli Mata, Joel Hanley, and Abram Wiebe on the left. And then on the right side, it's Perek, Nemec, Rustevich, Whitecloud, and Pahal. So, like, you basically have 28 forwards and defensemen who are, like I said, either NHLers or on the bubble. And it's just way too many. It's way too many. So the number one offseason priority for Craig Conroy this year is move out as many forwards as you can and move out guys like Paul, Hanley. If you get a deal from Mata, maybe try to move out a guy like Oli Mata. But I think at the very start should be move out at least 3 forwards and try to move out at least 2 defensemen. And I have Coleman, Zary, and then one of Siplikov or Sharangovich or Pospisil. And then on defense, like I think you got to move on from Braden Pahal and Joel Hanley if you can, because both guys have lost their spot on the team, and they're both going to be extras, and we all know they're not going to move them down to the American Hockey League because like the Flames, they do not want to have a bunch of NHL contracts down in the AHL. So I just think he's got to get busy here, and if it means not getting quite as much as he originally thought for guys like Zary or Sharangovich or Hanley or Pahal, then bite the bullet, because I think it's important that they open up roster spots for a lot of these younger guys. Like you're in a rebuild. The whole point of a rebuild is to get younger. So, what's the point of having, a guy like Coleman on your team until the deadline, or Pospisil who doesn't look like he's a fit here long term, or Sharangovich or Siplikov? Like, so yeah, that's the big thing for me. They gotta move out some bodies. I mean, like, is that not like a wild list of players? Like is that not just like way too many guys for a team that's in a rebuild right now?
I can't believe you forgot the most important one in Drayden Hunt. How could you do that?
Damn it.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
That podcast here. That is shameful. I left off Dryden Hunt.
Shameful. You know they love that guy. They call him up all the damn time. It's a big list. It's a lot of bodies. It's one that you may quibble over the Abram Wiebe, or you might quibble over, is this player, that player actually part of the mix? Like, is Stromgren actually part of? But those are guys that have seen NHL games. Those are guys that the team drafted high. Those are guys that are in the mix to be part of this roster. And you have 20, 28, 29 bodies for 23 spots. And it's a lot of bodies. And you're just talking 4 defensemen, 28, not including the goaltenders. So you have to have your goaltenders in there as well. You got to do something. There's a log jam here. The conversation has been how many draft picks they've had over the last 3 drafts and all the bodies coming. And you and I have talked about it on more than one occasion about how you've got to find spots for guys to play. And it's now starting to come to a head here. You have to move on from some people. If you don't believe that they're part of your future, move on from them. If you don't see them here in the next 2 seasons, move on from them. Blake Coleman, love you, but you got to move on from the guy. If Connor Zary doesn't see eye to eye with your coach and your coach ain't going anywhere, you've got to move on from him. What is Marty Apostol? Who knows? Move on from him. If there's a way you can move on from a Sharon Govich, you'll run to the fax machine and get that to the league office right now. You've got to find ways to get creative as well with your roster here. And so I'm with you here, Robert. It definitely is a high priority for Craig Conroy. How does this puzzle get fixed? How do we put this puzzle together? You do still want enough bodies that there are internal competition. Like, you just want to hand younger players these roster spots, but at the same time, you got to make it possible for these younger players to get a roster spot. If he's not going to make it at a camp, but let's just use Carson Carel as an example, fresh draft pick. If he came to camp and he blew your socks off, he still has to beat out like 5 other guys to even have a chance to be in the Flames lineup. It's impossible for some of these players. So you got to find a way to narrow the numbers down. You have too many of the same style of player as well. So pick who you like and move on from the rest of them. If you get someone coming in here who says, hey, I'll give you a good package for Joel Farabee, but fine. Thanks, Farabee. Have a great time somewhere else. If Winnipeg comes calling, hey, we really like Morgan Frost, let's work a deal out. You do your best to make a deal work so you can have those spots and have those abilities. The Wranglers are going through a change, and I think the Flames can help facilitate that change by moving out some bodies as well. So you can have your puzzle pieces, both AHL and NHL, kind of fit together here and have a nice pipeline again. Like, the Flames over the last 5 years here have kind of rated the Wranglers of all of their best players. It's time to reset that a little bit here and start doing it over again here. So move out these players that you're not using or you don't see here longer term. And please find a way to get rid of the Sharon Govich and or Huberdeau contracts. Just move on from something. It would be great to see the Flames do that. And for Conroy to continue to be aggressive. He was aggressive before the draft. I'd like to see that aggressiveness continue after the draft here as he navigates through July here. A lot of 28 bodies, man. That's a lot of players.
It is. It's way too many. And like, I was listening to Conroy after the draft on Steinberg's show, and he was talking about, like, they were talking about Cairns and Morton, who they just recently signed, and Conroy was pretty adamant. He was like, we need to give these guys a legitimate opportunity here because last season wasn't enough. And then he also mentioned that at the end of the year, Cairns was in a pretty tough spot. I guess he was playing around 80%. Like, he was definitely hurt. And, it showed. Like, his last couple games in the NHL last season weren't great. But even like Sam Morton barely got a look. And, I remember the one game in Chicago, like, he was like one of the best players on the ice. And I was like, you got to give this guy another chance. But there's so many bodies. There's so many veterans around. And there's also the Huska effect where Ryan Huska has to give these kids an opportunity. And he has to put them ahead of some veterans who he might like more and who he thinks might help you win a hockey game more than a younger player. Like, it's also on him too. So, moving these bodies out, giving your Cairns and Mortons and those types of guys legitimate opportunities, I think is something that's going to be so important this year. And, if it's not going to happen this year, like they're getting to that age of 23, 24, 25, where it's make or break it time for these guys. So the Flames have to do, everything they can to give these guys a legitimate 20, 30, 40 game look in roles where they can potentially succeed, just to see what you have in these guys. And, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice by not doing that. So yeah, let's see what Conroy's got up his sleeve. He knows that he has way too many bodies here. And, what's going to end up happening is if he doesn't move off a bunch of these guys, all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of money in the American Hockey League, and I can guarantee you Murray Edwards is going to be pissed if that happens. So he's got to work on just moving out as many contracts as possible here.
Are you surprised that both Morton and Cairns were signed or re-signed to a contract, knowing that Gross and Costanza are in the organization now and they're kind of going that direction a little bit here? How surprised are you that Cairns and Morton both got contracts?
I'm not surprised, just because they were 1-year deals, and both players are still really important for the American Hockey League. Like I'm assuming you're going to want to shelter guys like Castagna and Gross a little bit to at least start their professional hockey careers. And a guy like Morton can do that. Like he can take on those difficult matchups and, put up a little bit of offense. And, Cairns is a legitimate AHL all-star. So, from the AHL perspective, I think it's really smart that they brought them back. From an NHL standpoint, like we just talked about, there's too many bodies. I don't know if I see there even being a chance for them to play in the league this year. That's going to be up to Conroy to make that happen. But overall, no, I wasn't too surprised. Were you?
I was a little bit that both of them got a contract. I thought it'd be one or the other with a guy like how high they are on Castagna and what they did with Gross at the end of last season. I thought that those guys would get a lot of runway, a lot of minutes, regardless of where they are in the lineup. And so it just was a little bit of interesting that both of those guys got a contract, but it's nicely worded by you. I'm very interested what Jonathan Castagna becomes at the NHL level too. That's going to be interesting to watch. It's a fun time of year, Robert, with the draft, with free agency, with trying to build a roster, and it's going to dry up real quick here in terms of topics to talk about for the Flames. But it's interesting to be watching how the rest of this week goes and into next week as Conroy continues to navigate building this roster. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up on the podcast this week? If not, where can the folks find you and your work?
No, nothing else to bring up. That was a great episode. A lot of good info there. And yeah, I mean, we're about to move into the dog days of summer here. So I don't know how many episodes we're going to do here in the summer, but we'll definitely hop on at least a few times. But this, sure. I think probably next week we'll have a little bit more news because, free agency will be over and all that kind of stuff. And maybe we can break down what the Flames look like heading into training camp. But no, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to Wednesday. And I don't think it's going to be too busy for the Flames, but who knows? You never know with Craig Conroy. This guy's a wild card.
I look forward to talking the Zuccarella 4x4 deal with you next week on the podcast, Robert. That'll do it for us this week on the show. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your podcast rotation. We will see you next week on the pod. Enjoy the week, enjoy free agency, and hope Conroy loses his phone because we don't need any bad deals on the books here. See you next week.